Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and we're back to Shadowverse where we were going through the solo story mode, but that was honestly 3 or 4 months ago minimum, probably closer to 6 to 8 months ago. So I need a bit of a reminder here. I have done all of the solo mode, and so this is our wrap up for the time being until they add more expansions, which they definitely have, because I feel like we probably ended the story mode with chapter 9 being done, and they have since added a chapter 10 and a chapter 11. In fairness, I will say chapter 10 mostly was a single story mode without the four of the eight heroes having their own story, which changes things a little bit. But it just took me forever to beat the final boss in Invasion of the World Reaver. Uh, a, a lot of that certainly is the fact that I was not really spending any time on it. But a lot of it also just came down to getting lucky, as it were, and having the free time. They also redid some of the challenges in Seeds of Conflict so that the two heroes here, the Dragon Hero and the Havencraft Hero, Dragoncraft Hero and the Havencraft Hero, even though I had already done those battles, they changed them and made me do them again to get it labeled as completed. Um, Generally, we kind of know what the prologue is. It's nothing. I'm just gonna click these. And then we started this whole story in the troubled land. There appears, without warning, a mysterious force known as the Morning Star. The Morning Star springs shades, unfathomable and shadowy beings that drag the land into chaos. We haven't seen any shades in the story really at all, and the character here, who is the friend of the Forestcraft hero. I can't for the life of me tell you any of the names of these characters. Um, Eventually, we know she gets taken over and her body gets used by the bad guy of the first two chapters, who then gets replaced with a like comparable bad guy, which was Purgation. Uh, so much so that here we are now 11 chapters later, and I don't think there's any instinct or intent to ever return to the main bad guy and wrap the story up. Uh, the land then turned into turmoil. A scouting misfit steps forward, seeking out the source of each chaos. The Morning Star. They make their journey, at times cooperating and at times bearing arms against one another. When they reach their destination, a godlike figure known as the Nexus of Serenity, that's the bad guy who, or bad girl who appears and then gets forgotten for the rest of the story, and casts the group into a dream world. Um, this sets up the main characters as not particularly well fleshed out or well liked characters. Also, I think it's worth mentioning you should look at the art style here at the beginning, because by the time we get to about the 9th chapter, they give all of the characters new outfits. But I would say Shadowverse itself kind of wants you to forget about the main heroes anyways. There are so many in-app purchases and free skins that you can even get. You'll get a few of them at least to replace the main heroes with other characters. And certainly that also ties into the fact that they've made a more kid-friendly Yu-Gi-Oh! Style cartoon anime that they promoted and pushed. And certainly that has created this secondary issue in which some of the art has gone back and been censored slightly. Not that this was a particularly explicit game anyways. And then you have here Arissa and the others break free from the dreams created by Nexus. When all of their desires are met back in reality, they meet Yuan, who almost certainly was a character class that was added later. A warrior from another world. They learn that Nexus is a keeper, a being they can remake worlds. To save their own realm, which now slumbers in the keeper's dream, Carissa and her companions battle Nexus. Just as they are about to grasp victory, Nexus escapes and the world sets off in pursuit and crosses into another world. And then that starts the Guild War arc, which then leads to the Guild War, where we are introduced to the 5 guilds and the new characters that then get forgotten about in the 5 guilds. And arguably a lot of these characters were no more interesting, if not less interesting, than the main characters. And it seemed kind of ridiculous to introduce new characters, other than you maybe needed somebody to introduce the old characters into new worlds. I would say also we arguably have, even in 11 chapters, not seen great amounts of growth. It feels like the entirety of this story could have taken place over the course of days or weeks, whereas perhaps it would have been better if there was some downtime and the characters had more visual novel style, just fun time, instead of visual novel arguments that just lead to forced fighting. They do eventually fix that, because certainly in these early chapters, and that was your point, by the way, to pause and read that, because I'm not going to read all of these. I'll come back here just in case. Pause now if you want to read this. They do eventually get to the point where these chapters are not forcing you to play like 12 battles for each of the characters, and it gets down to the point where you're really only doing maybe 4 or 5 battles in an entire chapter, so they really rebalanced it. That being said, the 4 or 5 battles they tend to give you in those instances are often extremely difficult for new players, at least. Although I found a lot of them to be fairly easy with pre-built decks. And then you eventually figure out that the girl who you thought was the nicest girl and leader of the guilds was actually the avatar of purgation, and it leads the world to a brink of destruction. What's weird also about the beginning of the Guild War, and Gears of Rebellion just kind of continues that story, is it introduces a world that looks very different. If we were to come in here, and let's just pick one of these and hit OK. Like, you are introduced to a world that looks like this. This is their first world. There's these fiery areas on the side that really nothing comes from. Each of these areas barely even represents a starting point for each of the characters. And then you go to where this Morning Star is and Serenity is. There's lots of land, just a little bit of water. There's nothing particularly that you would feel like would equate to the rest of the worlds. But then you start getting a story in the Guild Wars and the chapters after Guild Wars that makes it feel like the entire worlds that you're visiting are the same worlds in different timelines, and they're just like copying and pasting the location. And that the only way that would make sense with this land is if this great tree that we see here is the central point of, if we come over here and where do we want to go? Seeds of Conflict is probably our best bet here. Notice how there's in Seeds of Conflict only 4 people that you have to play as. So unless you're making the argument that that great tree is actually this great tree, and that the rest of this is uh, the same land at just a different time zone, time frame, as where the um, the city here is, which every indication does seem to indicate that if not this city being part of the same locations, the next area in the next chapter is definitely part of the locations in different time frames. So it comes down to a question about, are all of the locations possibly the same location, or are just the two major ones? And you just kind of don't know. Like, I wouldn't be frankly surprised if all of these lands were originally going to be in the main area. Like, going to different worlds and going to different lands doesn't really have to happen. Like, this first map could have easily been the entire world that we ever went to, and there could just be certain cities and certain countries that are far to the north, far to the east, far to the west, that have completely different kinds of magic and completely different kinds of technology. The isekai, another world concept, didn't really have to be so incredibly embraced, and they really haven't done anything with it. So then the next part of the story, as I recall it, and this is recapping mostly from my own expense, is when they get to the futuristic everybody's a robot land. And then this was in particular the chapter where Tetra's outfit was just incredibly skin tight and just did not really feel like it matched any of the other robot outfits. Most of the robots were just metal. And yeah, their story kind of doesn't wrap up at all, because then it links directly back into Seeds of Conflict. So you have this city, which once again, if you were to tell me this was hundreds of years in the future on the same area, same landmass as where the guild's world was, I'd believe you. But I don't know why they would even say that and not just admit it. And then when you come into Seeds of Conflict, and we see that the main bad guy from this Gears of Rebellion Uprising manages to, in part, I think, escape towards the other realm, that seems really weird that you then start to have that combination. And very well, that might have been a case of they just ran out of budget, or that's just how they decided they wanted those two stories to go. But once you introduce that concept, it really caused some issues. And there really is no accounting for scale. Like, this could be super zoomed out, and any of these ruins could be entire cities that we'd seen in other realms. So then we went from that point to more Seeds of Conflict herring, and then we started to deal more with the new characters introduced, who are even less interesting. I guess in this case it was supposed to be very natural, but they couldn't even commit to being a very natural story, because there still was a lot of technology around, and that certainly was the factor that pretty much proved that Seeds of Conflict took place at the same place as the robotic world. And then we got to Invasion of the World Reaver, and we meet yet another purgation character, I believe. Like, she was corrupted. Yeah, Virda Magna, a character that I have completely forgotten existed, as she really did not play a big role. Yeah. And certainly by this point, you can tell how the main characters are just completely passive characters. And this was a single story section where you would have had to play through each of these roles. And so you start, it even transports you. I've noticed in some of the later sections of the story, they do a little bit of different things on some of these options. So then the world gets, all the robots get awakened, and they try to take over. And so you get this new skin, which honestly means they did have to draw it twice, or they just drew over the original image. And so it's phase 2, phase 3, familiar foes, nature versus machine, the key. And so, as far as I recall, the entire story here pretty much boils down to just working our way up to a great fight here. Here we have Luna and Eris and Ania face off against Electo. Like, I think I know who Luna is and Eris is. Ania and Electo, I have no idea. Mid-battle, the ancient robot found by Eris and resembling Roly-Poly Mark 1 responds to Luna and Ania's call, and almost certainly that was Roly-Poly Mark 1, which certainly also throws in some weirdness here, because it's not an indication that this nature land is the past of the robot land in the previous chapters. No, it's that this nature land is the distant future of the robot land. So then we have Heartless Despair. After Eris stops the Fury's robotic onslaught, Orisa and Erica sense the presence of corrupting Veranda Magna's Aether. And then Baphomet effortlessly repeals all attempts to take him down, as if to add insult to injury, he summons his Furies once more, his goal to crush all who would oppose him. And Baphomet is kind of just an uninteresting character. So, where we had stopped last time was here. So we're going to skip the battle, enable the voice, and we're going to go through all the story. The good news is I've done all the battles, so we don't have to actually go through any battles, so this can be just one episode to get us all the way to, as of recording, all the story that exists here. And then, in all fairness, it probably will be a year or two, if ever, that I'll do any more story. They do seem to be fairly content on adding more story, but a single chapter very well may just be a single 30-minute episode if all the battles are done. Although, maybe I'll just stretch it out by not doing the battles. Forgot you had to download the audio each time. It's been a long time since I've heard any voice acting in this game, so I don't know how to really take that either.
I knew you people hated fighting, but can't you try harder?
Okay, I know how to take it now, boy, because that's just an odd accent to pick. Yep. Now, I seem to recall they kind of loved to have the English voice actors do a lot of different accents from a lot of different countries, probably trying to emulate some fairly distinct like accents between Japanese speakers, because as small as the island of Japan is, or the islands of Japan, there's a fairly large difference that they can hear between somebody in a different from a different district.
We'll protect her no matter what! Well, this certainly reminds one of the old days, does it not? Oh,
Yep.
how we used to play together.
Mr. Lena plays no real role, and this cat girl, she plays even less of a role for as much as they focused on her.
Floor. Play? I just remember you trying to kick my butt.
Oh yeah, and I forgot, Latika is still unexplained talks like she's texting.
Well, crossing swords is the best way to empathize with your peers.
Mood. But, I don't really remember anything like these wrigglers from our childhood.
This probably could go into an auto mode if I remember the button.
Born without compassion or understanding. How remarkably frightening.
Natera.
Ye-
I knew from the moment I stepped on its natural surface that I'd hate this place.
I'm not sure Baphomet knows that this land is his world thousands of years in the future. There's almost an argument to be made that if you were going to play this with new content being added every couple of months with every expansion or so, being repetitive isn't as much of an issue. Whereas if you were new to the game and you were going through all of it, I feel like you probably would have run into some repetitiveness, but
The smell of the
so far we
place
haven't seen a lot.
makes me want to retch. And the dirt, even worse. It's all dirty, rotten. The wind, the blue sky, everything is an eyesore.
This is one of those instances.
That's why I'll paint it anew into a world of my own.
It seems weird to not show Baphomet
Disgusting plants.
and just show a background.
Try and defy me all you want. I bet you can't help yourselves with your emotions. But don't you see? In the end, we're one and the same.
This vampire guy, I've completely forgotten was even in the game. His storyline and just wanting to fight and find competitors was simply so one note. All the characters are fairly one note, but I've changed the hero skin when I play in multiplayer, when I'm streaming every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And so there is a different vampire character that I play as, and I completely forgot that this guy even existed.
We destroy that which we hate, that which deserves destruction.
I've done it
You only
also for the
oppose our
Dragoncraft
world
guy.
because of your misdirected malice.
See, now the characters have their new outfits that are slightly different. Like her Eris's outfit gets rid of a kind of morning star type symbol and goes for more of a angels type staff. So she gets a new staff and a different outfit. No explanation for the new outfits. This girl's outfit gets more of her cleavage covered up and just a little bit of censorship. She was probably one of the earliest bits of censorship in the game. Slight changes to his appearance, and that's about it. It's probably worth noting that almost every male character, I think every male character hero, I've replaced with a skin that is a female character instead. Personal preference or just perversion, take your pick. I didn't feel like any of the male characters in this game looked in line with the art style, which it's kind of crazy because there is no consistent art style, really. Feels like there's at least 3 or 4 different artists that make different cards. But even with the heroes, the art style seems fairly different. But yeah, the guys definitely did not match.
We're the same. The equivalent. With one major
New outfits here, new outfits here, new outfits here. A little bit less cleavage on her in the background. And they're trying really hard to squeeze a lot of characters on the screen. They can't get past this shield, I think, at the moment.
Though we were born a mere mortal, only Belphomet Ardalite have the faculty to create, and create we shall. Anything that suits me.
So, Belphomet is kind of like the only bad guy that they really put a lot of effort so far into building up as a bad guy too. And it's kind of a shame because they still make him fairly one note and childish and just a narcissistic control freak. He wasn't really given any kind of backstory or anything like that as far as we could tell, as far as I remember. He may have been if I'm recalling correctly, he may have been a bit of a loser originally in his original life, and he figured out a way to manipulate the system to gain power. But that's about it. Here we're getting a lot of animations and juddering. I forgot about how they shift the characters down to have them fall to their knees.
Or that it'll all work out somehow. Wake up and get a whiff of reality. Your hopes are just chemicals misfiring in your feeble brains. Delusions made manifest from desire.
Let me keep the mouse out of the way. There is definitely a question in my mind whether it's worth it to do as much animation as they are doing. Honestly, so much happens in Shadowverse, I'm not sure it needs a single player mode at all. And if it was going to have a single player mode, there's another game I play on my cell phone that's a gacha game, and it has a story mode, but then you're every day given a daily quest to play 10 levels of the story mode so that you can be rewarded extra resources, and you earn experience and resources for playing in this story mode. So it does a very good job of making the story mode part of the general game. In Shadowverse, unless you click the button that says give me solo player mode challenges, which I don't know if that's even guaranteed, there's no reason for you to ever play this story mode, and that they're not interested in you playing the story mode. They want you to play ranked or unranked against other players, so the online multiplayer player base is higher, and that's just how the focus is.
Doesn't matter what you say. I still believe in hope.
And in all fairness, the cell phone game I play doesn't really have any player versus player mode, except for one very limited mode, and almost everything else is single player. So that is the shift in focus, almost certainly.
Without hope, we wouldn't have a prayer of beating Nexus or Nerva. We wouldn't be able to save anyone, not even Lusaria. An evil man like you. You'd never understand.
Orisa has been the character.
Weak ones. Hope gives us the strength to take
Yeah, she's the only one who has like a main story character that has grown even a little bit, which highly suggests they should either kill off the other characters in the main story and move the main story so that only Orisa eventually makes it all the way to the end, or you kill off Orisa because she's reached the end of her story arc, as limited as it may be. That way she's not in the spotlight, taking away conversation from taking away time and focus from the other characters who have not really grown as much.
know what it means to be alive. What real power is.
This is all very kid-friendly conversation. We may have already seen this, but for me, I needed to refresh myself up to this point.
Worthless speech won't work on me. It could never, because you're as brainless as the gut bacteria you mistake for emotions.
We'll make you see. No matter how many times we have to fight you. So long as there's even the faintest glimmer of hope, surrender is not an option.
What sheer idiocy! Just too stupid for words.
Yeah, there's not really what to say here. So I kind of skipped there. So he brings back his Fury robots, which play really no role. They are just slightly more organic now.
They're still operational? The key staff should have rendered them immobile.
So yeah, you can see our new staff is kind of like Angel Wings, but not so much like Angel Wings that it looks Christian, but also it doesn't have the Morning Star on it. So they are trying to have the imagery feel like a pseudo-Christian imagery without going actual Christian imagery. That would be my guess. I don't think there's any Japanese religion that particularly speaks of angels.
Charging reserve Manaflux capacitors. All systems stand by.
Now, mediocre files, feast your peepers on the kind of power you get when you surpass emotional limitation. Furies, terminate them!
Terminate him. That was an unexpected phrase. So they just fall down. So the Furies break free of of Baphomet's control and attack him.
What the hell do you think you're doing? What the hell do you think you're doing to us?
So I guess Tisiphone may have died and hacked her way into them. Or somebody hacked into him. I feel like some of his voice acting might have been changed. And here's the other sisters.
You received that reading? Was it really them?
And Ania was yet another young character that was brought into the story who felt like she was just too young a character. Even though she is a robot, she still feels like a young character in the middle of this war-torn story.
It's so good to see you three again. My heart aches knowing you've been living with the spark this whole time, considering the atrocities you've committed. Oh, the regret, the anger you must feel. And yet, I couldn't be happier to finally...
Yeah, and I forgot how monologues.
The Furies, they just attacked Baphomet.
But that's
I
impossible.
forgot how long these could be.
Emotions are peculiar things. Now you see that better than anyone, don't you, Baphomet?
Damn it all. Why? I destroyed your memory logs, reformatting
This is funny how his lips are kind of moving, but kind of not. It's like he's just mumbling.
Wait. No. Was I... Me... us... we... So what? one and only Belphamit Ardalite. Was we mistaken?
Yes, Belphamit, you were. No matter how hard you tried to crush their emotions, no matter how hard you tried to stamp out their feelings, you failed.
It's funny because this battle basically crushed me. It took, feels like 100 attempts to finally defeat the game, because it was such a cheaty setup. The battle was with them starting with extra cards and extra life, and just it took a lot of effort. What's funny is she's not even said anything.
Say goodbye. He'll never do mean things to anyone ever again.
Luna's journey also did have her slightly grow up, which you kind of needed her to. Although I still feel like having her disappear to another land and then come back 3, 4, 5 years older would probably be useful. I think I suggested that in previous episodes. I don't know what I said and what I didn't really, but it would make a lot of sense to just have her stay with somebody and then come back and be a little bit older. It also wouldn't hurt, frankly, if that happened with all the characters. You don't really have to, in an anime style animation, change the looks of any of the characters to say that they've aged 5 years. And certainly since you have time jumps and different worlds, it would be easy to have her age and none of the other characters age. And he wouldn't age, so that creates the big issue of how you would change this character so it would look different. You'd almost have to have him nearly die and then bite somebody and jump into a completely different body using some weird vampire magic. But like the giant shoulders and chest of this character and most of the male characters is still distractingly odd.
Revenge for every life you've taken, Belphamit Ardalite. Prepare to meet your maker.
And certainly it's hard to pay attention. So this is where the challenge would have been, and I beat him eventually. So it does, yeah, it's kind of hard to pay attention to a story when you haven't really been engaged with the story for months.
Am I really going to lose? No, that can't be right. There's no way that's right.
So I guess
Nothing but pain and destruction,
either through the story or through an actual fight,
but never again.
we had already defeated Virga, the Mother Nature character of this world,
Will you harm the innocent again?
Virga Magna,
You fall into hope, and now
because,
carve that truth on your flesh.
wow, that sounds brutal.
We've already told you. Our emotions give us strength. That's why we won't lose to you. This battle is over, Belphamit.
Yeah, here you can see the samurai maid ninja assassin girl in her new outfit, which it's still, like, frankly, having a cleavage cutout like that is so odd that it really overemphasizes the cleavage even more than if this necklace part was just completely missing. That would be much more natural. It's almost an argument of percentage of skin being the problem, which, in fairness, they did make a whole different Shadowverse game for the anime kid-friendly game with whole different characters that they've sold on the Nintendo Switch, which then really makes the question as to if they're going to have a whole different game, why come and censor or change the outfits in such a weird way for the old game. It doesn't make a lot of sense. I wouldn't mind a collectible card game if it had an adults only version and a kids version, and the cards were just the same. Even if the art on the cards were different, that you could easily have that and have people playing against each other and not even know, because it's not like there's any emotes or anything that you couldn't replace. So like you could go to an extreme and have a Shadowverse that's really adult only, and the characters could be walking around completely nude in the solo in the card art, and then you could have a kid-friendly version of it that where the characters are just these little like Sesame Street type characters. As long as the cards do the same thing, there wouldn't be a problem there. There might be some bad advertising if you gave it the same name, but you could honestly have two different card games that go by two different names, and if you were going to have an adults only version of a card game, you probably would do a lot of effort to make sure kids couldn't play it. Make people put in a credit card with their real name and their age.
It seems so.
And I don't know if I really would want that. That there are mods for like Hearthstone that they can put in full porn if you want it, but it seems like that's a little extreme.
Yeah. Let's hope you're right.
See, in her character story in particular, Isabel's is in a weird place, and his is in a weird place because there's kind of not a good reason for her to be around. Like she doesn't really have much of a goal, and he kind of doesn't have much of a goal. A lot of these characters feel like they just kind of wander with the group. So Yuan is hearing a heartbeat.
It's not over yet. Heads up, everyone.
Okay, and then you have these fancy animations, which I'm still undecided whether it's worth it to have paid to animate these, because these animations don't show up at in the single player, really.
Foolish, incomplete vessel, you who hath known the precepts and bent them to their living conclusion.
So I don't know if this is Nerva talking to Baphomet or the Prologue hero.
What's happening?
It's her. Nerva.
This is literally the first time most of the characters have seen Nerva. And Nerva is showing herself in somebody's body or in her own body. And it kind of doesn't matter, but it does beg the question as to why Nexus would have needed to steal the body of one of the main characters at the beginning of the story, who then turned out not really to be a main character.
What folly.
So did she just attack there? I guess she did.
Broken vessel, commit thyself to me and gain untold power.
So yeah, she's talking to the Portalcraft guy.
Become yours? As in, submit to you? Like, completely?
I don't know if she's really talking to Baphomet.
No. She's about to finish making Baphomet her vessel. We can't let that happen.
I feel like she's talking to Yuan.
Does that mean she'll restore his power? Not after everything we've been through?
It really has been a lot. See, then they have some good looking effects, but then they have some pretty bad looking effects of like the background just shaking and people falling to their knees. Honestly, as much as they use the I'm closing one eye and falling to my knees animation, they probably should work on that a little bit better.
Haritha.
Everything hurts. But I can't stop here.
Don't you love a surprise ending? Oh, I may have lost a battle somewhere in all this crap, but I've won the war now.
The thing here is, if Baphomet stays in this main story, he's overstaying his welcome, definitely. But he also plays really no role in the card expansions. There's been at least 3 card expansions past this point where there are new cards, and some of the characters in the new card expansions seem to be from new storylines. And I don't think you really can make any more cards with the characters from this world, because you don't want like 5 copies of the same character.
Only on one condition. Piss off, you idiot god.
So, yeah, that's no way to talk to a god or anything close to it.
What are you thinking?
You've been waiting for this moment since the very beginning, haven't you, Nerves? Sending me to Natera, knowing full well I could manipulate the ancient machines of this world. But more than that, you knew we would lose to them again. You figured, incorrectly, that I'd come groveling back to you for more power. Any half-wit could have seen your plan from a dimension away. You didn't even bother to do your research, did you? I hate the unknown. And you are its very personification. Just thinking about becoming your puppet makes me want to puke. What do you say to that? I may have lost, but don't get me started with that emotion dribble. We fell to our own power. See? Power defeated me, not your pathetic hope.
This is a funny way to go down.
Let's get a kick out of torturing the meek. I don't mind it myself. That's why I'll enjoy the ill-conceived body you gave me until the very end. Defeat be damned! To hell with it! This putrid world sucked, and it'll continue sucking forevermore! It's all so friggin' clear to me!
I feel like this may have been censorship too. So he's just gonna suicide bomb. And they don't bother showing the other characters.
You were too far gone.
Did he just do himself? How awful.
Yeah, this definitely feels like they've maybe changed a lot of the dialogue. But just as they went further, they've decided to make the dialogue more watered down. I feel like the whole story was watered down to begin with, though. It's weird. It's a weird story that feels like it's for like 12-year-olds, 14-year-olds at best. And this just does not feel like a game where I think 12-year-olds or 14-year-olds would want to play it, even in Japan. At least the story part. Maybe they'd want to play the actual online part.
The struggle across dimensions. But we came out victorious. The path forward for this world won't be easy. But the populace will learn to overcome their hardships in due time. Most importantly of all, however, the sun shall rise another day. That much we've guaranteed for Natera.
So we've got to wrap up.
And as for what lies beyond tomorrow, well, the light of hope still burns. Rejoice, friends. Be proud. Our struggles were not in vain. For this world breathes free once more.
This is one of the points where it would have been very good for them to have taken a year break and really got to know each other and been fast friends, because there really is no good argument to ever have the main characters at this point fight against each other. If you're going to have them fight against each other, it should be just because they're taken over and controlled by somebody. And honestly, that would have been really smart for them to say that Nerva and Nexus had the ability to brainwash people and put them in dream states and have them fight. Because we've even seen that Nexus can put people in dream states, so it wouldn't make a lot of sense to trick people that way. Suppose it's also worth mentioning that I've since changed my microphone setup a little bit. I have a rounded sound muffler, like sound padding, around my microphone, which means that my clicking mouse may not be picked up anywhere as bad as it would have been in previous episodes, but certainly I can still hear it. So this is where they get to the weird part here. It's read any part of chapter 13 to unlock chapter 14. And in this case, chapter 13 is this. They call these chapters when I would probably... No, I probably would have called them chapters too. And called the other things episodes. I feel like they call the episodes chapters too, though. At least they did. So let's just read all of this. Enable the voice. And see, this feels like this would be the good point to have everybody...
I've got butterflies in my stomach.
Have everybody like spend some downtime and get to know each other and reconcile any possible grievances that they might have.
Maybe you're just uneasy. After all, we weren't the ones who took Baphomet down. But in the end, we still emerged victorious.
Yeah, this girl's face is completely different, it seems, than the way she was drawn before.
What? No way. Everyone else helped too.
See, her motivation is she wants to get back to her princess, who she almost certainly has a lesbian love for. And she also wants to prove herself to be worthy of her princess since she was an assassin in the past. Her motivation is to save her friend who Nexus stole the body of, which probably won't ever happen.
Look, think back to when we fought Viridia Magna.
We're partners, and don't you forget it.
Alright, flashback time. This is where we're going to start seeing the redundancy.
We can't get near her. What are we supposed to do?
See, this is her old outfit, which has a little bit more cleavage and a little bit more leg showing, and her skirt's flipped up.
There has to be a way.
I had given up.
And see, now they depict the skirt down, showing a little less leg. I think the fact the skirt was just flipped up is more of the issue than anything else. And we still, even with the new outfits have the insane amount of anime BS in the fashion, where there's just belts on the arms, 3 belts on the arms, things here, things here, things here, frills here, frills here, ribbons here, ribbons here. It's just a ton of stuff that could have been watered down.
I was able to pick myself up and act. I thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Oh, Erica.
I've done unspeakable things to you. To everyone. I've been a dreadful ally, haven't I?
Don't say that. You've been a great ally. And that isn't going to change.
I guess this is the implied hand on the shoulder or a hug.
It must have been painful, Erica. Maybe more than I realized. But that's why we have to support each other. We'll always work together, okay? And slowly but surely, we'll all help you deal with your pain.
Thank you. I'm so glad I met you. Oh my.
These really do feel like characters that they feel like they want to always be stuck in the exact same patterns, and you just can't go 11 chapters and not have a character develop. Here we have Miss Selena. See, as a kind of non-main character, you've got more belly showing and big cleavage, even though a big breast, even though it's mostly covered up. It's not, I suppose, too much to say about her outfit. It's just the cat girl.
Oi,
Here.
let go my hand, sis. Sword Babe and Chickadee are watching.
And we have to be reminded, of course, that Latika definitely hit on like every female she ran into.
Miss Delina.
And Latika! Aww, I can tell why Latika likes you so. You're simply adorable.
How long have you been there?
Oh? I suppose since you began crying ever so gently.
Are you mocking me?
I certainly won't deny it.
Her
Your
face
tear-slickened
is
face
just not
too
really
tempting
drawn
to
well.
dress up. I can't believe how close you two are.
Bessie's just laying it on heavy. Makes you kind of jelly, huh? Glomp.
Latika, this feels pretty heavy too.
So she jumps on her. That's what glomping
You know
is,
you
I
love
think.
it. Besides, who knows when I'll get to see my Chickadee again?
Like,
You're right. I guess this is goodbye. Come on, girls. Group hug. Oh, now that is a superb
it would be really
idea.
weird
Don't
to
be
see
shy,
this
Erica.
fully animated. That almost certainly would be a waste of
I refuse.
animation budget. There was a visual novel game I recently played where they, in the sequel to the series, decided to replace everybody with 3D models, and boy, was that a mistake. It definitely made the game look way worse, and there was just even less poses because of it. It was not a smart move. Probably didn't even save them any money.
Raffle. You know, this peace stuff's pretty rad. Now let's hug it out, yeah?
And see, I guess that jumps to this next part. Weird that they kind of give you a choice there, almost as if they're telling you shouldn't care about all the endings for each of the characters. And so now we're in a kind of different location. We're going to wrap up with Tetra and some of the other characters, I'm sure. Which I guess there's a decent chance that the robots are not getting back to their timeline.
There you are.
Which maybe they have to go back to the timeline to make sure everything plays out the way it should.
Isabel. Something on your mind?
See, her motivation was to reanimate her dead lover, and since she's given up on that, her only real motivation has been to kind of learn new magics.
They are gone now. My sisters.
For what it's worth.
No. I am glad. Glad they were able to live out their last moments as their true awakened selves.
It's kind of nice that Tetra didn't get introduced as a permanent character. Although, frankly, if you were going to have Tetra replace Eris or her, that would have been kind of fine. I don't think I would have wanted to stick with the outfit, though. It's just so skin tight with this under adornment that just really draws the eye. You've got a lot of things pointing downward. You've got a lot of things pointing upward. If the skin tight suit was missing completely, then she'd basically be wearing bikini armor, because the gold part here is basically just a thong.
What if there was a way you could see them again? If you could bring them back? I do not know. For now, I think I would like to respect their memory.
You're a strong one, Tetra.
And see, that's her arc in a nutshell, is that
I have
she
become
doesn't want to
strong, Isabel.
bring her lover back and turn him into some kind of trapped spirit.
So, what will you, Mono, and Ania do from now on? Well, there is no way for us to return to Iolon. And even if we did, all of Eilon's infrastructure will have been destroyed.
So they get stuck on this area.
I was thinking, perhaps, if the local inhabitants would allow it, we could settle here in Atera.
Would you be okay with that?
Affirmative. I am not sure if I should praise that tyrant, but thanks to Belphinet's modifications of this world, we will be able to maintain ourselves without issue. Additionally, I may be able to repurpose parts from the wreckage into a transference device and bring over refugees from Eilon.
I suppose that is some consolation.
And you, Isabel? What will you do?
Well...
So they're kind of bending over backwards to get rid of a lot of the characters that they introduced.
Don't look at me like that.
Which is good because you can't just have a growing cast of characters.
I'm going to burst into tears at any second. I better go now. Who knows what kind of dimension we'll need to save next?
Even though I knew your answer, I asked anyway. Emotions make us do puzzling things, do they not?
But they also connect us. Allow us to grow closer. It's the same for you and I. No matter how far away we are, we'll always be friends.
Yes, you are.
It is such a just
Allow me to mark this occasion.
simplistic story here. It's like emotions are good.
What is it?
So she does something magical to her necklace. She had a necklace before. This is an interesting animation, and it certainly opens the door that in future stories we may see some slashes / zoom ins as a new type of animation.
It is an accessory made from my spare parts. Although negligible, perhaps the residual mana could prove valuable to you on your journey.
And see, that kind of feels like they completely changed her outfit there. And unfortunately, there's no way to go back. Like, you can go to the log, and that's it. But yeah, now all of a sudden her outfit seems to be kind of back to showing maybe a little bit more cleavage, and her stockings holding up her socks is a little suggestive.
This is no time for lies. The truth is, I wish for a part of me to stay with you.
Almost like she's got this giant like vampire collar now. And perhaps it's slightly more simplistic of an outfit than what we've had in the past, but also it's still following the same thread of there just being a lot of little details that almost certainly drive any animator having to draw different poses for this crazy.
Thank you, Tetra. I'll treasure it.
Her face, feels like it looks different now. It's making her feel a little bit more Asian, to follow like a stereotype here, and maybe trying to make her look a little bit older.
Is it too much?
Not at all, silly.
Affirmative.
I'm not sure how this world will turn out, but I've got a pretty good feeling about it.
Do you think it rains here?
This is one of the cases that I think also brings back the idea of if these characters simply jumped into the bodies of other characters, you could then always completely redraw a hero and still have the same personality in there. You could just have an occasional like image showing what the actual person looks like while they're in the body of somebody like Tetra. Instead of after several years, like 3 or 4 years, trying to redraw each of the characters and then still seemingly not have somebody lock down those character designs well enough.
But when it rains, I hope you'll think of me and remember that you're not alone.
Yeah, they are trying to make her more of a seductive looking character.
You have me. your sisters, and everyone
which
else
is
too.
basically what they've always tried to do with Isabel.
Thank you. Truly.
Mm.
Tetra, don't get started.
Instead of, say, some of the other characters who they write as characters that you would want to desire for the Japanese ideal of like purity, more than this character who is
I am glad I could shed these tears
flaunting
with you.
it and
Goodbye,
being
Isabel.
seductive in her visual appearance. Here we're skipping
So it's
quite a
over.
bit. I would be surprised if we see yet another change with Rowan, but maybe they could fix the fact that his dragon spear was constantly getting cut off and his cape is constantly getting
It was
cut
all
off.
for naught, wasn't it? Most things are. The calm after the storm tends to feel hollow.
Interesting that Valdane's not even on screen.
Valdane, are you sure this is where you want to stay?
See, Rowan would work if they just scaled him down a little bit. Like, Valdane is one of the characters with just way too broad shoulders, way too broad of a chest, and he has that same problem, but if you just scaled him down a little bit so he was at the same height as most of the other characters, or just half a head length taller, that would work fine.
I am the forest shadow. I do not belong in the light.
If you say so.
Still honest to a fault, I see.
See, they're having to
Does
work
Gina's sister still weigh heavily on you?
really hard to wrap up each bit of story,
We won. But those we've lost will never come
and
back.
certainly it's an issue.
I was just reflecting on that truth.
Ill fortune seems to favor this world.
Like a curse.
A curse, you say?
Yeah, this guy said he was cursed, but I don't know if he really was.
One that haunts me to this very day.
No, he wasn't cursed. He was just... He just was lied to about his parents.
The spirit. When it was bearing down on Gina's sister, I hesitated.
I don't even know who Gina is. It's been so long.
It was only for a moment. I could have easily taken its life. And here lies now the result of my indecision.
Gina, I think, was one of the characters that was introduced. Maybe she actually got killed.
A stained man, Rowan.
Feels like more characters should have been killed.
You haven't told Gina, have you?
It is my curse to bear. One that I've extended to you now.
Yeah. Gina's sister may have died a long time ago, actually.
I should return to the soil before my time. Please, tell the others the truth of my life.
You have my word. But you should know, Valdane, the knowledge of your past, I don't consider it a curse or a burden. It's proof of our trust in one another.
Call it what you will.
Let us meet again, Forest Shadow. And when we do, I vow to stand proudly before you.
A lot of these stories really don't feel like they went anywhere.
A promise coming from you is almost a certainty. I look forward to our reunion.
Here we have Urias.
Oh dear. Doth my eyes deceiveth me? Or doth dusk descendeth dithery? Normally the sun wouldn't set at such an early hour. You must be relieved, being a vampire and all.
And here I was enjoying the silence before you destroyed it.
Never mind.
Yeah, they're still doing the flipping thing. But they completely just flipped his image.
By a lady of refinement. You stand there like
No reason to even have done that.
Could you not find a sufficient hole to die in?
Lucky for you, I sure did. The same grave as my sister's, in fact. But I'm not ready to go just yet. What about you, Bloodsuckius? Any comfy-looking coffins you've taken a fancy to?
Who can say?
See, what's the point of flipping this character like this? Like, if you were going to flip the characters, you definitely shouldn't have given him a giant, obvious piece of armor. This color looks different and the hair looks different too. Maybe they're just changing that as they go.
You always have the same woebegone expression after a disappointing battle.
If you were going to flip them,
This time, is it?
I don't know why you would flip them, frankly. Because if you were going to make it so that it worked that they were flipped, then you would have to have basically made them bilaterally symmetrical, making one side exactly the same as the other side. And then nobody would notice, and then there would be no reason to flip them in the first place. There's no reason to flip the image.
Useless prattle device. Here. This is a parting gift.
Dot 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 dot.
So you have finally learned to turn off your voice.
Sorry, it's just... This is surprising.
You wanted me to cultivate an appreciation for flowers, but I have no interest in mere decoration, so you will appreciate them in my stead.
I don't know what to say. Of all the words stored in my database, I can't locate any that express what this means to me.
I don't hate the dot dot dots in this visual novel element. It would be better if they put descriptive sound effects instead. So, surprised exhale in parentheses would probably be better for people who are actually deaf. But compared to the visual novel game that I mentioned earlier, that game had a lot of dot dot dots, dot dot dots, dot dot dots, and it was forever. They sometimes put 6, 7, 8 dot dot dots as pauses for no reason, really, and it was really bad implementation of that. I think you have to be extremely careful about putting any pauses in how you're going to put a pause in a story like this, a visual novel style story.
If your neck weren't made of metal, I would tear it open and let crimson spill forth. But for now, the red of those roses will have to do.
Well, I must say I do much prefer roses over fangs. For once, I'm actually glad to be made of metal.
We must part
These
ways.
robot
My
girls
next stage awaits.
never seem to have been human.
Might you not wait for a bit longer?
It
I too have
could.
something I wish to share.
It could have been the case, certainly, that they revealed that they actually were human at one time.
Oh,
But seemingly they're not going down that route, and that's fine.
Assuming you are unable to find a suitably dramatic end, or if you happen to perish at random, out wandering in some distant dimension, I'll find you and kill you myself.
very well. I shall relish that day.
Parting, the sweetest sorrow, but the promise of a future together, an intertwined tomorrow. That's what'll keep me ticking, dearest Gortius.
Yeah, she's just like talking directly to the screen. Monologuing.
This way, Clunky!
So they awakened this robot that looked a lot like Roly Poly Mark 1, even though Roly Poly Mark 1 I think was destroyed. So I guess he might be Mark 2. There's definitely a card called Roly Poly Mark 2. Seemingly we're not going to get any...
You're so slow, Roly Poly!
Seemingly we're not going to get any explanation at all as to where this robot came from.
Never seen me roll all out. It is refreshing to hear the laughter of children again.
Yes, it helps soften the sadness of inevitable goodbyes.
It certainly
Their
is
laughter still fills this
fairly
after you
repeated
are
to
gone.
have two characters with staffs standing next to each other. I feel like you could fairly easily remove the staff from both of the characters and have them only display it when they're about to battle.
I hope so too. But at least every parting presents a chance for new meetings. As we were bidding Asunia goodbye, we found ourselves greeting you after all.
This feels like a completely different voice actress at this point. I'm not sure if that's the case, but she sounds very, very weird. Also, this staff, remember, is some kind of key that manipulates the technology in this world. So, Aerith taking it potentially may doom the entire planet if it's an important piece of technology.
One encounter that still gives me pause, however, is Roly-Poly Mark I. He was destroyed on Ialon, was he not?
Yes, so I've heard. This is simply an assumption, but perhaps it has to do with the nature of Luna's gifts.
See, her voice sounds just awful, like it was recorded in a different place.
Her gifts?
On a different microphone.
She commands death, but so great is her power that she has trouble controlling it.
Is she talking about her or her? Both of them kind of command death.
It is feasible to think that the shock of Roly-Poly's death triggered a response within her, causing her to inadvertently absorb his soul. Then, after arriving in this world, she unwittingly deposited it into a matching vessel.
I suppose that's an explanation, as good as any other.
You look stunned. Well, I suppose it does sound far-fetched.
I suppose the real question there is, do the robots have souls? That's the real question you have to answer before you can believe that.
Then this means we robots. Do we possess souls too?
Of course you do. You bear the burden of emotion, do you not?
I guess that's their way they're gonna play it, certainly, is that robots have souls because they feel emotions.
Many sacrifices were made for us to come this far. But it is over now. The fallen have found peace.
Aerith sounds so bad. If this is the way she's been sounding since the beginning of the stories, they should have just re-recorded all of her dialogue with a whole new voice actress. Like, it would have been a lot of money to do that, but it's like at a certain point, also that's just a flaw in the translation director's like decision making. Like, he should have heard that audio and listened to the daily recordings and said, no, this does not sound right, we need to fix this. Whether that's getting a different voice actress or getting a different microphone or recording something completely different. It shouldn't sound so different.
Shall we, Tetra?
Affirmative. My accelerators are superior to organic beings, so do please try to keep up.
Even among organic beings, I am not much of an athlete. Do try to go easy on me.
So, yeah. And see, that's just really weird that they come in here and they give you 5 small sections of chapter 13, and even they don't really care that if you listen to all of them. So why not just add 5 more sections of story and have this be a 19 chapter long game? The only real reason you can even make an argument is because they did not want to give you any kind of rewards for any of that story wrap up, whereas almost half of the other things do give you some kind of reward as far as playing a level. And then 2.4 megabytes might be an indication of how long this dialogue is.
From here on out, it's anyone's guess as to how this world will evolve.
They definitely are wrapping up.
Hopefully the people will prosper, and live in harmony with their land.
And he's just talking straight to the screen.
The future isn't always so clear-cut.
It would have been so easy to just have Balion on screen to start with, and then him say Balion, then comma, the future from here on out. That way it looks like he's talking to him in the first place.
Ah, Forest King.
Though Viridia Magna's blessing has returned once more, the virtuous mother herself has gone dormant. One wonders if she will wake again during our lifetime. Or even at all. Seems our hardships are far from over.
This guy is just kind of no character that you can have. There was another like anthropomorphic animal character in previous chapters, but honestly they should have dropped that concept because there aren't that many characters on cards that are anthropomorphic animals by default. They're not like the furry style. There are definitely a lot of anime girls that have dog ears and cat ears and things like that. But that is just so different a category these days visually than seeing someone who is definitely a lion that just stands on 2 feet compared to a human that has some lion-like features in this case. And there's probably only like 2 cards with this guy, and they aren't particularly in line with the art style of the other cards, which in all fairness, the card expansions still feel like there are 3 or 4 different art styles that happen with every expansion. Almost certainly it feels like 3 or 4 different animators are given the task of drawing things, and it's fairly inconsistent. Where if you looked at the cards for something like Hearthstone or Magic the Gathering, at least per expansion, each of those animation styles are very, very consistent.
You place a lot of faith on my shoulders.
I see the hope you have for your kingdom. As long as you hold on to that hope, prosperity is inevitable.
I suspect we will flourish in this new world of ours, alongside our new brethren, of course. I shall do everything in my power to protect all of my subjects, even should it cost me my life. Such is the duty of the Forest King.
A commendable decree, Your Majesty.
There was a lot of minions, for lack of a better term, on both sides that were fighting. I don't know if we're just assuming that most of them died in the final battles, or if they're just not going to show up because they weren't big named players. I don't even know if we're going to see I want to say Meowth character, the mouse character. Meowth, I don't think is his actual name. That's a Pokemon's name.
Once more for saving the Terra. You have my eternal thanks.
For a game called Shadowverse, it wouldn't really have hurt for the story mode to potentially have characters die, and that's how they become cards. That the cards are the memories of these fallen heroes that you once met, or heroes that you once met and just have memories of. That's exactly the theory behind Magic the Gathering, is that you are a planeswalker, and every single creature is actually a creature spell that you're casting to summon some creature that you once met or have memories of.
Perhaps. Strife knows no bounds. However,
say no more. Judging from the look in your eyes, I believe.
See, this is his new outfit, and the shoulder crystals is a little extreme. The giant emblem is too big, and then the belly being shown is a little crazy. Like you would think, if you had such a large slash across your shirt, you would take his sword, take some scissors, and cut it so it's straight, or at the very least, and not just leave it that way, or you'd stitch it back together.
I see the hope you have for your future. And as long as you hold on to
Even this is better, because this is intentional.
Prosperity is inevitable?
victory is inevitable. Farewell, Ewan. If your band should ever find itself in our world again, we will greet you with open arms.
Until we meet again, Balion. Somewhere. Someday.
It's funny because it kind of feels like Yuan is getting a whole chapter to himself, which once again almost plays this argument that Yuan was not in the story at all, even at this point, and I can't believe that's really the case, because there's no way they would have even been able to travel to New Worlds if that was the case, because he was the one that gave everybody the ability to travel.
I hope you've said all your final goodbyes.
But they still do seem to
lead to.
isolate Yuan and his stories.
I never wanted to experience the cruelties of war again. It never changes, and it never gets any easier. It feels damn near hopeless at times. We've yet to capture Nexus, and Nerva's escaped us once again. But now we've got an advantage we've never had before. I was able to mark Nerva with a tracking spell. So long as we follow the trace, we'll find her.
So at least they're going to follow Nerva.
It won't make our journey any easier. But at least we're not running in the dark now. We have to press on. Other worlds are depending on us.
So it would be rather nice to see Nerva captured in the next couple chapters and just be done with them. If it took them 4 years to get to capturing Nerva, they could take another 4 years to capture Nexus, and that would be fine. Like, I doubt 8 years into Shadowverse there will be any major growth as far as new players. Even 4 years into Shadowverse, it's unlikely that it will all of a sudden become amazingly popular, more popular than it is. They've also flipped this image, which once again, why are you going to flip images if it's going to be blatantly obvious?
You can count me in, no matter what.
They almost never flip Orisa, from what I recall. But maybe they do.
We're allies. A truth that is now engraved upon my heart. Of course I'll accompany you.
They're still doing the thing with her big collar, her big cape, getting in the way of people. They need to get rid of all the capes.
None of us fight alone.
As long as we have each other, there's no problem we can't overcome. I truly believe that.
I'll be fine as long as I'm with you guys.
I go where the most entertainment is to be had. If that is with you folk, then so be it.
They're almost implying that this is one big panoramic area where everybody's standing facing one direction, and this is to the right of where he was standing and the other characters were to the left.
It seems our
I guess that's the case. Nobody's moving.
Let us make the leap, Ewan.
So this really goes to show that there's literally no way for them to get all the characters on screen at one time.
Aye, you chosen few.
Now, why? I don't think there really is any reason why he wouldn't be able to transport more people. So it would probably have made sense for somebody to ask, at the very least, to join, or for them to ask more people to join them. If they built up a giant army, they would be better suited to take on Nexus and Nerva, because they do seem like they're basically gods.
Our journey is long. Our destination is unknown.
This is a definitely different piece of information, of artwork, I like it. It's nice and all. It is one way to certainly get everybody on the screen, but it's very visually inconsistent even from the back, as far as what the characters look like normally.
We'll still press on. Like forever and ever? Oh, well, we'll press on as long as we can.
We'll at least catch up to the Keepers and take them down.
Even more fierce battles await us. But
So here you can see that they're saying even if these characters did defeat the Keepers, they are still a door open for more enemies
We've never
and more
backed down from a
travel.
fight before, and we won't start now. Will we?
Not at all. Not after we have crossed through myriad worlds.
We'll find the keepers.
Air still
and save as many worlds as
sounds
we must.
completely out of place.
It's time to jump.
But take note that they almost certainly are not going to show you much of
Kiss the hand that feeds you. Fear the gaze that leads you.
just a bit of a teaser to the next chapter, not a lot.
Marry the bride that needs you. Sweeter words bind us. Careful they don't bleed you.
You hear sound effects of motorcycles and cars, and you hear someone talking with a kind of country western accent.
they're coming.
And see, this is basically Bonnie and Clyde in a desert with a car.
All right, Hoss. Think this job will do us good?
There's more than a job here. A lot of big fish swimming upstream.
That means we'll be eating rich tonight. Which
See,
means
I have
we
no
go
idea
no steaks.
what this would have sounded like in Japanese. Like Japanese people doing a country accent. It probably sounds particularly weird. Can we jump to Japanese? Nope, not easily. That's always a shame that there isn't a way to just swap instantaneously.
That'll do us. Let's get them with all the trimmings here.
Certainly, this is a different environment. It is a 180 from robots and nature, but it is going with more of a Western and car aesthetic.
Oh, but more sides means less meat.
It's still two very different concepts, like cars existing and a kind of not industrialized Western frontier environment and type of people don't really mix.
Well, a preacher gets his bread when he preaches, but a sinner gets his bread when he sins. Let's get to it, bun.
That's an interesting phrase. See, it's all just question mark, question mark, question mark, and he's calling her Bun,
Damn Skippy
as
Bear.
in bunny.
Let me at him.
I've been playing the card game, so I know the cards that came out from this expansion that are in line with this story, and one of the main focuses is vehicle amulet cards that give you boosts, either increased attack, defense, or the ability to attack on the first turn with Rush or Storm. And it definitely, I feel like, has improved Shadowverse a little bit by speeding up the game. It definitely feels like they are going in that direction to try and have less games that drag out, which is always a good idea.
We're gonna get
His name is
everything
Baron. So it's Baron and Bunny instead of Bonnie and Clyde. And so, yeah, that will be the beginning of Fate's Trigger, which I've already done all the challenges, and seeing how it's taken an hour and 30 minutes to just kind of recap and finish that part, then in the next episode, which I will record and release, we will do as much of Fate's Trigger as we can as far as the story goes. And then we will do Fate's Trigger conclusion, which one would hope that the story kind of does conclude there and it doesn't create a scenario where you have, let's see, the Guild War and Guild War conclusion, then Gears of Rebellion, and then Gears of Rebellion not really concluding until Invasion of the World Reaver, which that's basically 4 out of 11 chapters were focused around Gears of Rebellion and Seeds of Conflict being merged together as a storyline. And there really was no need for that. Anyways, that's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend to follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.